welcome back guys to part 6. Hope you guys enjoyed that little intro. Today's video is going to be a little bit longer today and a little bit different, but please let me know if you guys are into it in the comments. We're doing an in-depth video today on trying to rebuild the brakes on this car on the C3 Corvette LT-1 barn find project. That's a lot to say. But yeah, what we're doing today is we're going to rebuild all the pistons so they're all nice and sealed so that we can stop this monster, because without brakes we can't get this puppy to stop. So we're going to be rebuilding all 4 calipers and putting them back on the car today. And hopefully, if we can get this all done today, we can get to the engine next week. Alrighty guys, that said, let's get into the video. Alrighty guys, let's jump right into it. We're going to go ahead and rebuild the front and rear calipers now. We're going to go ahead and start with the rear caliper first and get that out of the way, and then we'll move to the front caliper. Go ahead and start disassembling this here on the bench, and we'll get you a closer look here. Alrighty guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual. I'm actually going to speed up the process of me rebuilding these calipers here on the bench, just to show you guys the steps it takes to go into rebuilding these calipers. It's actually really interesting, and I thought it'd be a good way to show you guys. Bet you guys didn't know those calipers were 2 pieces, did you? There's a lot of things I learned going through this process of rebuilding these calipers. You know, I've done them on my Mustang before and a few other cars, and it was just a lot different than I've ever seen on any other car. The engineering behind these brakes are quite unique, and again, just like I mentioned in the other videos, the technology on this car is just way ahead of its time, and it's just very cool to see and how they adapted to, you know, old 70s technology to be, you know, the best performance out there at that time. So there was definitely a lot of crud and grime inside these pistons. I mean, man, I believe it's brake fluid that turned into like a solid, and man, it made it like glue in there. It welded those pistons pretty far in those cavities, so we got to do a lot of recon, but you know, it is what it is. So there was actually a lot of that solid brake fluid crud stuck in every cavity of these pistons, and on the actual pistons themselves, the piston heads I guess you'd call it. They were stuck in the cracks and where the new rubber seal was supposed to be seated, so I definitely had to scratch all of that stuff out so I made a proper seal, because apparently I looked up online the Corvette forums. I guess a lot of the guys are saying that the seals that we use on the pistons are very touchy, and you have to make sure that the surfaces are all clean before you put them in and install them into the pistons, because otherwise apparently the seals won't seat properly and you'll have leakage, and that's like the last thing I want to be worried about when I'm doing a burnout, you know? You know, hey, brake fluid's coming out, what? So, yeah, no. We're going to make sure we take care of that and make sure there's no leaks, because, again, we're trying to have fun with this car, trying to go long distance, and last thing I want is brake fluid leaking out of my brake calipers on the trip, so. Taking a look at these brake pads here, we can see that there's still some life on this brake pad. Actually, enough to where I could say that this can last a while. We're going to want to get this junk off here, because man, oh man, this stuff looks nasty, and I do not want that melting and making a mess all over the brand new piston job we got going on here. Alright, I'll be quiet and let you guys watch this part, because it's actually really satisfying. I don't know what it is about sped up time lapses that make videos so satisfying, but let me know in the comments if you guys like that video style. Maybe I'll do it a little bit more on the videos. I actually had to sand down the 2 sides of the calipers where they join, because when I joined the 2 pieces together, there's actually the little rubber gasket there right next to the bolt hole that you can kind of see on the right hand side in there. What happens is if those surfaces are uneven, you will not make that perfect seal that you're supposed to make with that rubber seal, and you'll get leaks. So you got to make sure that you got to torque it to spec, and you got to make sure it's flat, so that's why I'm sanding it down. It looks a little goofy, but got it down flat. You don't want to go crazy and make it, you know, sideways, and then you got bigger problems. But this is a really satisfying part too, is seating the seal. If you're watching this and trying to learn how to do it, please be careful when you're putting in the piston seals, because if you do hit them sideways, you're going to ruin them, and bending them back is not fun. And I almost ruined one of them, so be very careful when you're doing that. Just the tip, I mean, these things are kind of fragile, so be careful with that. When you are assembling this, like I'm doing, I like to lubricate it with the brake fluid, just the DOT brake fluid, because don't want to put anything dry in there, because that can cause seating problems and all kinds of stuff. So this is the guide pin. Definitely needed some cleaning, because those brake pads would make some squeaky noises going across that guide pin, so clean that up real quick. And we seem to have a good working caliper. Alrighty guys, now that we got both rear calipers rebuilt, now it's time to move on to the front calipers. Now these guys are a little bit different in piston size, so I don't know if it's going to be harder or easier to rebuild, but let's go ahead and get these rear calipers off the bench and out of the way. Let's move on to the fronts. So one thing I could tell right away is that these pistons are a lot larger than the rear. And of course, when I bought the seal kit, I noticed that, but just by visually seeing it for the first time, they're way bigger than the rears. So kind of makes sense. In the front, you're making the front brakes work a lot harder than the rear, so it makes sense why the pistons would be a lot larger. It actually made it easier to take them out, believe it or not, but there was way more crud in the fronts for some weird reason. For those of you that don't know, this car has been sitting for 20 years, so this is definitely needed to be done, and this stuff has been crystallizing and drying up in there for the last 20 years and has been untouched, unmoved, and all that good stuff, so definitely needed that attention. Hopefully I did a good job here and took out all the crud that was in there, because I wanted to make a really good seal, and it seemed to be really smooth in there. There wasn't any like scoring going on in the piston walls. Now I know some of you may be thinking, oh, these brakes look like they've been sleeved before or something in that line. So from what my knowledge is and what I looked up on the forum, it seems that these haven't been sleeved before, because they don't have like a lip on them or anything like that, or what they showed me in the pictures. So it seems to me that these may be original, but one of the fronts did look like they were different than the other side, so maybe those were sleeved at one time. But from what I understand, I don't think these brakes have ever been gone through. Ooh, it looks like Christmas in there. Jeez. Someone please confirm if that white stuff is brake fluid. Very curious. So the fronts were a little bit nicer than the rear, because the pistons actually stayed inside the cylinder and they weren't pushing up on the seal when I was trying to seat them. But them being larger, it was a little bit harder to hit them straight, so be careful. I'm not gonna lie, after a few pistons, this became actually really fun, because it was almost like synchronized, and it was just like one cylinder after another, and it just kind of became like this game for me. These calipers set did feel like a puzzle at the time. The passageways were really fogged at one point, but I did get them unclogged with actually a clothes hanger, believe it or not. It worked really well, to be honest with you. One last thing I want to do before I install these up in the car is I want to lubricate all the brake pads and guide pins and pretty much anything that's going to come in contact with friction while I apply the brakes, just to minimize that squeaking sound I was talking about earlier, and of course to keep the lubrication up, because these are moving parts and you don't want them to wear down. Alright guys, now that we got our brake calipers rebuilt, now we're gonna put brand new rubber brake lines, just because these are the first things that are gonna go out in the brake line system and they're the cheapest thing to replace, so might as well have new parts in there. Make sure that all the lines are clear, because I have a headache over a $12 part, you know. Get right into that. Take the old brake line off. Yeah, that is nasty. Dude. Alrighty guys, we've got a rubber brake line on there, and now it's time for the caliper to go on. So I'm gonna make this easier for myself and compress all the pistons so I can slide it over the rotor. Ease. This might be a little bit tricky because you kind of have to press it at the same time. There we go. Guys, we got everything reassembled here in the rear. We got the caliper on there, got the brand new rubber brake line in here, we got the sway bar rebolted, everything's good to go. Now it's time for the front. Alrighty guys, now that we're on the front here, the first thing we're going to do is get rid of this nasty rubber brake line right here. Look at that, it's just hand loose. Bye! Let's put this new one in there. I already went ahead and put a fresh copper washer on this, because when we go to make this with the caliper. Alright, now it's time to put the caliper on here. Spread the piston. Alrighty guys, now that we got the front and rear calipers done on the passenger side, now we're going to go ahead and do the rest of them on the driver's side. We're going to go ahead and speed up that video for you too. Since the calipers looked as bad as they did, we want to go ahead and take off the master cylinder, because if those look bad, I'm assuming that this is going to look just as bad. I'm going to first take off these brake lines. There you go, there's the front. Now we're going to take off the two bolts holding the master cylinder to the brake booster. That looks a little rusty in there, huh? Inside it's very clean, but not the inner parts of it. You can actually see some of the ports right there. They seem to be pretty clear right now, but who knows what's inside? That could be deceiving. So let's put this up on the bench and see what we got. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this up right now and see what the inside looks like. Okay. Okay. What is it? I'm old and dirty. What does this one say? Me too. That's good. Alrighty guys, well that's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you for sticking around for the whole video. Please let me know if you enjoyed today's video in the comments down below. I'm always responding back to you guys, so let me know what you guys think. Again, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate your support, guys. Thank you. See you guys in the next video. First person to tell me what this cartoon... Oh! Anyways, first person who could tell me what cartoon that helmet's from gets to subscribe back on YouTube. Go, go, go! Tell me in the comments when you're ready. Go!